Cool. Thank you. All right. So let's get started. I think if people join later, they're probably going to be able to catch up and uh, take the content as we go. The agenda for today is going to be pretty simple, right? First of all, thank you for everybody for joining in. My name is Ricardo Ferreira, and I'm a developer advocate with Elastic. And with me today, also, we have Jay, which also is a developer advocate from Elastic. So we're going to be the ones helping you with your abstracts and the proposal for the Elastic Community Conference, right? So the agenda for today is going to be really simple, right? I broke down in three main areas, right? So the first area is going to be, we're going to share some general guidelines about how to build a approvable or mostly approvable abstract, right? So that's going to give you the chances to increase your the chances to be approved for the conference, right? And those guidelines are going to be interesting because they're not necessarily going to be focused only on the Elastic Community Conference. So if you actually are willing to apply this talk or other talks for other conferences, I think that's going to be useful as well, right? And then the idea, we're going to spend about 10 minutes doing this. And then the idea is I'm going to give you an additional 10 minutes for each one of you to try to apply those general guidelines to your existing talks. So we do hope that we came today with your abstracts partially ready, at least even though you might have only ideas for the talks, we're going to help you with those as well, right? But for those of you that are ready to submit, we're trying to apply those general guidelines, right? And we're going to give you 10 minutes for this, right? So now we have 20 minutes. And then the remaining of the session is going to be focused on us, Jay and I and Emmanuel, helping you, each one of you, with your abstracts, right? So the way we're going to actually handle this, you might come forward, speak up, please unmute yourself, and then you can just start discussing your abstracts, or you can also chime in the chat, and you can ask for one of us to actually help you with your abstract, right? I don't want to give you the false impressions that we're gonna actually be able to cover all the abstracts within an hour, right? We're gonna do our best to do it. Hopefully, maybe we're gonna be able to do this, but in case we won't be able to help each one of you, right? My friend Jay is going to help me to collect all your requests, and then you can just share your email and the link of your session on Sessionize, and then we can send the feedback later asynchronously, right? We're going to write it down to your email with our recommendations for your abstracts, our guidelines about what you should need to change, if you need to change anything, and a general feedback about, all right, this is good, this is bad, this is in the right direction, things like this, right? So let's start, as I mentioned before, with the general guidelines. So this is the part where I would like to spend about 10 minutes with you, like mentioning like general tips that we usually kind of try to follow every time we build a talk that we plan to submit for a conference, right? This is basically a collection of general thoughts that the developer advocate from Elastic that has been kind of working for the following year. So I think that's going to be used for everybody, right? The first step is it has to do about how you would like to structure your talk, right? So we like to say that a talk is like you telling a story, right? That has to have at least 3 sessions, right? So the first session of the story is you connecting with the audience, right? So what that means in reality is that you have to spend about 1 paragraph, likely the first paragraph of your abstract, trying to grab the attention of whoever is reviewing your abstract, and likely the person that, if your abstract is approved, the person that actually is selected if they're going to join your talk or not, right? The best way to do this, the best way is to connect with your audience, is to share a problem or discuss a problem or detail a problem, right? For example, maybe there are people that are still confused about how to correctly size a Elasticsearch cluster in terms of how many shards, right, they should actually size for a given workload, right? So maybe you could start like discussing a situation where the selection of the wrong side of wrong size of shards led to a workload that failed in production or caused some problems. So this is the way for you to catch people's attention, right? So this is the way for you to okay, I'm interested in this, right? Whoever is reviewing your abstract or whoever is evaluating your session is going to be, this is the aha, right, moment. So this is the best way to actually grab people's attentions. Just give me a minute here. Okay, no, we are recording, so we're good. We're good. I thought that we were not recording, so never mind. Okay, so let's come back. 3 parts of the talk. So connect with the audience is, I think that's the most crucial thing that you have to do in your abstract, right? The second one is to provide your technical background, right? So let's say you start connecting with your audience, like discussing or elucidating a problem, right? So you need to provide some technical background that likely is going to be the content that you would be willing to share with your talk, right? Something that actually going to solve a problem or something that actually useful for the attendees, right? There is a very blurred line that connects the first part and the second part, connected with the audience and provide a technical background. What I mean by this is that conceptually, if there are 3 parts, you're going to create at least 3 paragraphs for your talk, right? Doesn't have to be like very long, but at least 3 paragraphs. It's not wrong. It wouldn't be wrong for you to create one single paragraph in which you connect, you still deliver the connection with the audience, but you still start discussing and providing the technical background. I've seen a lot of talks that actually has been written like this, and it just works, right? Because we're going to talk later about being consistent, right? And the third part is applying the technical background. So it's like when you start discussing a problem, you give a glimpse of the people about a certain problem or situation. And in the end, you were still given a glimpse that by applying the technical background that you were discussing on the second part, you are going to solve that problem, right? So that is going to actually grab people's attention consistently, because they're going to see, okay, this is the problem that I'm interested, point number 1, and this is the solution that supposedly the speaker is going to share with us. So this is how you should structure your talk, right? But as I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be like a religiously like using 3 parts. You can like create just 2 parts, but make sure that you separate the ideas of connect with your audience and provide a technical background, right? Secondly, make sure you fine-tune your content or your abstract with the guidelines of the conference. This is one of the most simple, although powerful tips that we could provide, because whether if it's for the Elastic Community Conference or for other conferences, the major mistake someone could actually have is to not follow the guidelines for the conference. For example, if the conference is about DevOps, right? Do not try to deviate from the DevOps subject, right? At least your talk has to be about DevOps or something minimally directly to DevOps, right? So that's what we mean about stay in line with the conference. Also, if the conference says that there is no tracks, for example, which is the case of the Elastic Community Conference, we're not going to use tracks for this conference. Do not like base your talk into a given track, like oh, I'm going to talk about serverless or microservices or Java development and things like this, right? You're going to be willing to think as your talk as a sequence of talks, right? So your talks are going to be, if approved, is going to be positioned in a sequence of other talks, and you don't necessarily have to have a cohesion or a coherent list of that follows a track. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Keep it short, keep it sweet, and keep it focused, right? Your talk when I talk about, when I say talk is about the abstract, it has to be like really, really short for whoever is reviewing feel comfortable reading it, right? Do not create, like, we're going to talk about this later, but do not create like longer paragraphs in which you are basically exhausting a given thought, right? Or you're trying to, and too much details explain something, right? Be succinct, right? But be complete, right? Do not leave anything behind that perhaps would cause whoever is reviewing your abstract to not fully understand what you're trying to say, right? And lastly, be careful with naming and mental associations. What I mean by this is that this is a mistake that I've committed a lot in the past. For example, every time I would like apply for a conference that was about stream processing, right? I would like have this mental association that, okay, if I use the term Spark or Kafka, whoever is reviewing is going to understand, right? So this is what I said about mental association. Oh, every time I talk about observability, anyone from the DevOps background will understand. Or every time talking about Elasticsearch, right? Anyone that is doing log consolidation or log processing will understand. So try to avoid these mental associations because this is not true, right? First of all, you have to always consider this. Whoever is reviewing your abstract doesn't have the same background that you have. It's not so awesome as you are, all right? So try to explain, like Jay has an expression that I like a lot, that try to explain like eFarm5, right? So try to abstract the fact that he's an adult that is reviewing your abstract. So be very, very detailed in your explanation. But again, don't be so lengthy, right, in your abstracts. Also, and this is very, very important, right? So whoever the committee program, as we call it, the group of people that actually is going to evaluate each and every abstract submitted, right? It is a human being, right? That is just like you, is tired, just like you can be running out of patience, just like you can be like so overloaded with things to do that maybe they would separate like a Sunday afternoon, right? The time they could be spending with their families, they're going to actually sit down and evaluate your proposals. So thinking about this worst case scenario, I'm not saying that all the program committee members are actually going to do this, but at least when I was a committee member before, that was happened with me. Like I didn't have like all the full of energy, the enthusiasm to actually sit down and gonna say, oh, I'm gonna do my best to make sure I approve every single proposal that I see it, right? The reality is that we became tired, we became short of patience. So because of this, try to create scannable content. Scannable content is a set of techniques that you apply for writing, right? That a person doesn't necessarily have to 100% put their mind focus on your text to fully understand what you're trying to say, right? There's some techniques that has to do with punctuations, pauses, the usage of commas, the usage of shorter or lengthy paragraphs. All of this gives some very subliminal hints about the people that we review into, okay, this is very efficient to read, right? So this is scannable content. So mind longer paragraphs, make sure you use commas. Like nobody likes to actually read a paragraph that they have to take breath, right? And catch out their breath in order to continue the reading, right? And try to write as if you were selling something, right? And I mean by this, right? Because in the end of the day, you were selling an idea, right? So just like you would be like a selling for someone, your primarily mindset has to be, okay, I need to convince that person that what I'm willing to say is important, right? So how can I actually be heard, right? So you were selling. There's a saying that says that, okay, in whatever you do, you're always selling something, right? This is no different here. And the dry technique, don't repeat yourself, right? Don't commit the mistake of, okay, in a given paragraph, you thought something, you said something, right? And the second paragraph, maybe even though you were using different words, you were basically saying the same thing all over again, right? This is a mistake that I often do myself, right? So I have to polish myself all the time to not commit this mistake because it is boring, right? Whoever is reviewing is boring to, okay, I understood this paragraph, but this paragraph, you are always willing to kind of expect that something different or new is going to be written and said, right? And the reality is that sometimes, okay, the dude is talking all over again, the same thing that I've just learned in the paragraph before. So keep that in mind when you're writing. Also, and this is key, right? Your talk, right, has to deliver something actionable, right? What I mean by this is that whoever is both the person that is reviewing your abstract and the person that actually, given that your abstract was approved, the person that is looking to the website and deciding if they are going to join your session, they're going to join your talk, they're interested, right, in solving a problem and understanding more about a given subject and understanding how to use a given feature or technology, right? So make sure your talk always deliver something, right? I have created in the past talks that basically would, for example, showcase something that is very interesting, right? But in the end of the day, the person that actually watches the session don't use that for nothing, right? Not sure if you follow, right? Imagine those sessions that, okay, they're interesting, but how can I use whatever the person is saying in my word, right? So always put yourself in the seat of, okay, it doesn't have to be about you. It has to be about the person that is coming to your talk and trying to learn something that is new or something that is useful, okay? Another common mistakes that I've done in the past, and most people kind of do when they're create talks, is trying to kind of sell themselves too high, right? Kind of trying to compensate the lack of interest in the talk with something that's so amazing they do in the past. For example, oh yeah, I'm going to talk about that Elasticsearch cluster that I was able to kind of index 3 million documents in less than an hour or less than a minute or less than a second, which is what we call the wow sound for phenomenon, right? Indeed, it is really interesting. It's really wow. But what if, think about this, what if whoever is evaluating your talk doesn't necessarily have to have this problem, right? Not everybody has to actually index 3 million documents in a minute. So try to put yourself in the seat of whoever is evaluating your talk, the program committee members, and whoever is actually going to evaluate if you're going to join your session. Always thinking about others, not yourself. And remember this, if your talk eventually gets approved, you still have to make sure that people join your conference. Like, for example, it happened with me in the past as well. For example, I had a talk that was interesting, and because of this, it was approved, right? But in the end of the day, during the conference, I remember that only 5 people actually joined it, right? And I remember that I was really upset about, okay, what did I do wrong? And then I asked a feedback from a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, and then he said, Ricardo, yes, your talk is interesting, but it doesn't deliver anything useful for whoever is presenting. And then when I heard that and then reevaluated my own talk, I said, yes, you were right. I am not delivering something. I'm just trying to kind of sell myself. So this is a urge that you have to try to resist as much as possible. It's not that you don't have to be awesome either in your abstract or when you were doing the talk. You still have that right, because in the end of the day, you are awesome. We all are, right? But remember, it is a selling process. You have to convince people that your talk is interesting, all right? It's not going to become interesting just because you think it's interesting. You have to prove it, okay? And let's talk about don'ts, right? And so this is going to be like 5 tips about don't do it, that likely those are going to be the tips that I would like you to apply to your abstract right now before we start evaluating each one of them, right? So let's start with number 1, titles, everybody. Your abstract, your talk is comprised of 2 main parts, the title and the abstract, right? I have done this mistake in the past, which is concentrated all my energy, all my focus on the abstract to come up with something really, really approvable and amazing. And I forgot the title, right? And by all means, right, I am not saying that all the program committee member does this, but at least I know, I ashamedly admit that I've done this on the past when I was a program committee member, that some talks that I was evaluating, if I didn't actually like the title, I didn't even bother to read the abstract, right? I know it's a shame. I shouldn't have done this before, but it happens, everybody. And here, I think we have to talk about what is actually true and facts. And this happens all the time, right? So your titles has to kind of magically grab people's attention to say, this is what I'm willing to listen to. This is what I'm willing to actually learn from this talk, right? And then your abstracts is like you already have their attention. Now they have their commitment to actually enjoy your talk. So mind titles, don't make them too lengthy, right? Make them catchy, right? So one approach that I like to use in my talks that I submit to conferences is to sometimes use like titles from movies, especially the movies that are very, very common. For example, last year I submitted a talk that was approved, right? That basically I stole the title from that movie, a comedy romance movie that is basically How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, right? So I just adapted to How to Lose a Microservice in 10 Days, right? So this is what I call it, kind of a catchy, like titles that people say, people look at and say, yes, I grab what you're trying to say in a very catchy way. Point number 2, don't oversubscribe the solution. This is a very common mistake, right? This is not necessarily something that will make your talk approved, but it's not nice. For example, imagine that you, in the first part of your talk, when you were connecting with the audience, you describe a problem, a very interesting and recurring problem, right? And then when you were in the second part, when you were elaborating your technical details and the technical background, you're providing so much details to a point that whoever is reading your abstract already know the answer of what they should do. For example, what is the magic formula for coming up with the right number of shards in the Elasticsearch cluster, right? And in your abstract, you already give that formula. I wouldn't bother to actually go to your session because I already know what I would like to know. So this is what I said, save the meat, right? Give a glimpse, right? Kind of insinuate the solution, but don't give all the details, because that's the part that will make people still interested on joining your session, right? Please do not come up with sales pitches, right? I know that in the end of the day, we're all has to pay bills. We're always have to report to the companies that actually pays our salary. From time to time, Emmanuel, Jay and I, we work for Elastic, right? We have to talk and everything about Elastic, but we have to polish ourselves and pace ourselves to not, for every company and conference that we apply talks, we talk exclusively about Elastic, right? Because this is a sales pitch, right? You don't want to come up with the community conference. Yeah, you have to talk about the technologies from Elastic, all right? But you don't necessarily have to talk in such a way that you are forcibly pushing, right, the usage of enterprise features of Elastic, right? We don't want this, right? We want to make sure you cover all your talks focusing on what is open, right? What is open source and what everybody can use it. Again, remember the old tip, right? You have to come up with something that is actionable, right? So if you start talking about a feature that is only available given a subscription or a paid feature, right? Not everybody will have access to that, right? So, and I'm talking this even in the context of Elastic, right? If you want to talk about something that is kind of a product from the company you work for, do it, but in a way that it doesn't seem so clear that you were trying to sell something, right? There are ways to do this, trust me, right? Do not submit your talk without proofreading your text, right? This is important for a lot of reasons, but there are some common reasons out there. For example, I, Ricardo Ferreira, I am not, English is not my first language, right? So every time I create a talk, a blog, or a proposal, I have to double check, triple check my English, because as you can see, it's not perfect, right? So this is one more reason for me to mind the proofreading of the text. Even if you're a native English speaker, right? Or if you're native in whatever language the conference is about, right? Make sure you ask someone, a friend, a colleague of yours, to double check your reading, because your writing, because sometimes it's not about grammar. Sometimes it's about consistency, like being coherent, being objective, making sure you're not too subjective, right? Which leads to our last tip of don'ts, right? Try to avoid language that implies something, right? You know, those, I would like to say that, but I'm going to use a jargon or a type of language that I don't say this out loud, but this is what I'm trying to say. Don't do this, okay? For two reasons. If you leave margins for misinterpretation, you are going to be misinterpreted, right? Law's Murph, okay? Murphy's Law, okay? Secondly, sometimes it's not, you're going to make so hard for people that is reviewing your abstracts to understand what you're trying to say that they will eventually, remember, they're doing this on their free time, Sunday night, they're tired, they're running out of patience, they're going to say, I'm not going to follow this one, reject it, and move on through the full job runs, because it's too hard to understand, okay? So speak clearly, right? Speak with all your words. That's the most important tip regarding like not using implications or subjective language, right? So now I'm going to give you like 10 minutes, right? I know that I probably took more than 10 minutes to pass through all these general guidelines. I'm sorry about this, right? But I'm going to give you 10 minutes, a time for you to try to apply all those tips in your abstracts right now, right? And after this 10 minutes, we will start discussing each one of your talks and then trying to apply the guidelines, discussing specific details, discussing your ideas for your talks. And if you want to, I'm going to make sure I share here on the chat, right? The link of this presentation so you can like remember everything that I've just said regarding the tips, right? I would put here on the chat. Okay. Let me just grab the URL. Okay. My Dex. Just give me a minute. But meanwhile, feel free to start applying the general guidelines to your submissions so we can like be more efficient. Okay, here it is. Come on. Okay, copy URL. I'm going to put in the chat so everybody can see it. And okay, I just wrote on the chat the URL of this presentation. If you are unable to load this URL, tell me, because I've just noticed, right, that speakerdeck.com, which is the website that I use to upload all my presentation, is kind of misbehaving, right? I'm not sure if their service is going down or something's happening, right? Ultimately, I can upload this on my blog, which is, I know that's working, right? Because I accessed this morning, and then you can read from there. But just let me know, okay? If you're not able to access this URL. And most importantly, if any of you has a question about everything that I've just said, I'm free to discuss right now. Like you have 10 minutes for trying to apply those general guidelines in your submissions, but not necessarily that I'm going to be over, right? I'm right here. Ask your questions, unmute yourself. This is a community. That's the beauty of it. We can discuss because ultimately we are all friends, right? And we are here to help you, right? So wherever you want, wherever you need, we're here to help. Okay, counting 10 minutes. Oh, I think there are some questions here or comments in the chat. Let me try to catch up here I know that Jay has been following up all of them. So thank you, Jay, for doing this. So for example, a very interesting question that Landy asked in the chat, right? How long the abstract should be, right? So Jay give the $1 million tip about, always mind the characters limit for a given abstract. I know that Sessionize imposes this because when we created a Sessionize conference, we make sure that that was set there. But I would say, and this is Ricardo, right? It's not a kind of a golden rule, universal golden rule, but I like paragraphs. And I do this for everything, whether I'm writing an abstract or a blog. I like paragraphs of top 5 lines, right? It's a way to kind of be objective and succinct, and at least this is how my brain works. Every time I try to read a paragraph that's more than 5 lines, I have to, okay, all right, let me take a deep breath because there's something else coming, right? So 5 lines is ideal, right? But again, this is my opinion, right? This is not a general rule. Okay. Actually, Kumar actually made a very interesting question, which is, how do we know the interests of the audience? So very good question. So remember the tip about trying to be in line with the conference theme, right? That's how you know the conference houses. For example, if you go to the Sessionize and see the details about the Elastic Community Conference, we welcome every talk that is about solving a problem, a use case, a story, and ultimately, of course, anything that involves the technologies from Elastic, right? That's the theme of the conference, right? So that's how you know, right? Yeah, Jay is also responding to that. Thanks, Jay. Yep, and a very important comment from Jay. Please feel free to unmute yourself, right? Don't be shy, right? Remember, think about this, right? If your talk is approved, right, you are going to actually speak about your talk publicly with everybody watching you. So this is not a time to be shy, right? But even though if you are shy, and I understand it because I was shy in the past, right? This is something that this is a problem that I overcome. You can reach out in the chat, keep asking your questions here, and Jay and I, we do our best to answer them, right? Oh, thanks. Actually, there's no option to unmute. Really? My mistake. So let me try to fix this. Okay. Okay, so I've just unmuted everybody that is here. So try to talk something.
Hey everyone, thank you for coming in and attending. I will say, if you are asking a question, unmute, but once you've asked your question, go ahead and mute yourself back. Now you can actually toggle that. So feel free to unmute and ask your question. But just remember that background noise is a thing, and we want to make sure that we can understand what everyone is asking.
So Sachin asked you a question here about where are the topics on the conference is listed on some site. So I'm going to share here the link of the call for papers page where you can see all this. Okay, so in this link, Sachin, you will see that all the details that comprises what we are expecting in terms of talks, right? You're not going to see, right, things like, we expect things regarding Elasticsearch or Logstash or Kibana, Beats, APM, anything, any product, technology, or solution from Elastic is welcome, right? We give more emphasis on what are the formats or type of stories that we are expecting, right? So you're gonna find all of this there. So Landy, thanks for your question as well. And indeed, it's a bit confusion. Sorry about this, right? This is the first time we are actually organizing the community conference, so I think that is expected. So what we expect until the 13th is for you to submit your proposal, right? That's it, right? If your talk gets approved, right, then you are going to receive, everybody that gets a talk approved is going to receive a speaker training, right? If you wish to participate, if you don't, or that's okay, right? And then if during your proposal, right, actually I take that back. If your talk gets approval, you are going to have, you'll be given an option if you want to pre-record, right, or present it alive, right? So if you pre-record, if you choose pre-record, then you have to submit, like we will share the timeline for this. You have to submit your recording. Or if you want to present it live, then that's where you will actually presenting alive, right? There's no such thing of, okay, you have to submit your slides, right? If you're willing to share your slides, that is up to you, right? The most important part is during the day of the conference, you present this, okay? Let me know if that clarifies. That's a good question, by the way. Okay, we have 2.5 minutes, and then we can start evaluating your proposals.
Just a quick reminder, there is a link in the chat. I'm trying to keep it top of mind. If you would like for us to review your proposal and you haven't yet, please fill out the form. We want to take as much time as we possibly can with each person, which means that we will most likely not be able to get to everyone on the call, but we're going to be going through and connecting with everyone and being able to give feedback on their proposal after the call. So if you can, please fill out the form. It's so that we can make sure that we are able to reach out to everyone that wants help and that we're able to help them in the ways that they have asked for it.
While we have still 1 minute left, let me share another tip that is not on the slides, right? But it is a tip about the Elastic conference itself, right? You're going to see on the sessionize.com link that I've just shared with you that there are 2 types of talks that we are expecting from you, right? The 5 minutes, right? Usually called Ignite talks, and the 25 minutes, right? At least for me, this is me speaking, right? At least for me, I usually try to choose this 25 minutes talks all the time, right? Why? Because I talk too much, and I usually kind of lack control of time to kind of manage time when I'm explaining something, right? As you can see here, that I promised that it would take 10 minutes to explain the general guidelines, and I took more, right? But the point is, because there will be no tracks for the Elastic Community Conference. We're going to actually put the approved talks in a sequence, right? There will be no track, so we're going to be scheduling each one of them in a sequence as long as it fits the conference, right? Because of this, this is my suggestion for you. Try to submit a version of your talk for 5 minutes and another version for 25 minutes, even though you were willing to have the 25 minutes accepted, right? This is more to increase the chances to get your talk approved, right? And let me share a secret that all speakers kind of get very upset when they get their talk denied, right? I pass this all the time. So like I get really mad about, oh, my abstract was so good, why was it rejected? And sometimes, let's listen carefully, sometimes it's purely a matter of, because I've chose the 25 minutes talk, it didn't fit along with the other talks because of the time restriction for the conference, right? So it doesn't have to do that your talk actually was not good. It was more like, okay, for timeline management, it didn't fit. So this is more like try to come up with this. You are not obligated to, okay? You can just submit once and then thanks for this. But in order to increase your chances, that's a tip that you should follow, all right? Okay, 10 minutes has been passed, all right? And let's do the third part of this this meetup, which is, let's talk about your submissions, right? You are not obligated to, okay? Let me just make this clear, all right? If you're shy or you don't want to actually publicly discuss your talk, that's okay. We respect this. You can just reach out here on the chat. Jay and I and Emmanuel will make sure that all your talks will be reviewed, right? Either right now or like Jay just explained it, right? If we don't have enough time to do this today, just fill the URL. Jay share it, right? Airtable, yes, he shared it. Just go to the Airtable link, fill the form, right? With your, very important, your email and the link of your talk, right? Because if you don't provide your email, we won't be able to respond to you with the review, okay? Or like, make it simple, just bring it in and we can discuss, right? So let's use this time for this.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
So my talk is about like introducing like beginner conceptual like topics about Elasticsearch. So like shards and nodes and index and replicas, like all of those things are kind of confusing as a beginner. So I wanted to talk about that. But I'm having trouble like explaining, like provide the technical background and explain the technical aspect because it's more conceptual than it is like really technical. So like how would I expand on those two like topics or those two subheadings when I'm writing my proposal?
Got it. That's a very interesting question. And I have the problem too, right? So it makes you feel better. Everybody kind of passed through this. I would say for you to focus on a given problem, right? So remember the tip about connect with your audience. So try to think, okay, what if you are responsible to put Elasticsearch in production, right? And you don't fully follow all the rules of sizing and what's going to happen, right? So you can start talking about the point of view of, all right, imagine that you were responsible for putting Elasticsearch in production and you try to emphasize what would happen, right? This is how you connect with the audience.
Right.
And then your technical background is try to explain the importance of understanding this. And trust me, this type of talk is very welcome, right? Because I've seen a lot of people, Elasticsearch is an amazing technology, right? But I think it has one problem. It is too simple to get started. There's a lot of defaults that you just like start up the Elasticsearch, everything is up and running in a matter of seconds. But people kind of believe that they do not have to understand internals or like going forward.
Right.
And because of this, we keep seeing like a lot of people complaining, for example, oh, Elasticsearch doesn't scale. Elasticsearch is too heavy. This is not true, because there are ways to customize Elasticsearch, but that requires you to understand internals, which is exactly, thanks, Landy, exactly what you were trying to explain in your talk.
Right. So like, I've written down my presentation outline, but like my outline is like, I have a topic called like terminology and concepts, which is about 6-7 minutes. And I wanted to like explain like what are nodes and what are clusters and what are the defaults that you get when you first install Elasticsearch, and then like it kind of expand from there. Is that too broad, or should I like narrow it down?
It depends. You were waiting to kind of submit as a 5-minute talk?
No, I was gonna submit it as like a 25-minute talk, and like my first section was like an introduction of like what is Elasticsearch and what are its use cases and what's Kibana, and then the second part is like terminology and concepts, and the third part was like querying, like how do you do a simple term query and a match query. So that was kind of like just really simple basics for someone who's really new and doesn't know where to start.
Yep.
Ricardo, can I jump in on this question a little bit?
Oh, by all means, my friend.
So, hey, Landy, by the way, I think one of the things that when giving an introduction talk, it's so hard to thread the needle of how simple is too simple, or how like what terms should I define and what terms should I not define. I think by all means, when in doubt, define things and kind of trim. So if you say like, what is Elasticsearch? What is Kibana? What is, enterprise app search? We can't assume that everyone there knows for a fact what those things are, but we can kind of guess that the majority of the audience is going to have an idea that the Elastic Stack is a thing, whether they've heard of it from maybe another talk that's been given at the same conference, because it is an Elastic focused conference. But what happens if you're first? And so like you still want to be able to introduce those things, but then maybe at the higher level, you just kind of give a quick description. And then when you go into some of the smaller terminology like nodes, clusters, index, and shards, that's where you're going to want to spend a lot of time focusing on defining those things. Because as you've mentioned, if you're giving an introductory talk, if you're getting a let's get started in this talk, then your audience is going to be people who know what Elasticsearch is, but they may not know why they need to think about nodes or clusters, or why they need to know about sharding. It might not be a thing that they've been introduced to yet. So I would say like the higher level information, maybe you bring up, you don't go into too much detail on. The stuff that the beginner may not have heard about, you really want to make sure that you're adequately defining those things if you're going to talk about them a lot. If you're not talking about them at all, I would not bring them up, mostly because it can just cause confusion. But if you're going to be mentioning nodes in like every other sentence, it might be good to explain what you mean when you talk about a node, especially for a beginner focused talk.
Right. Okay. And then really focus down on why this information is important.
Exactly.
Okay.
Why it's important to the content that you're presenting.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey, hi everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello.
Hey, great, Landy. You already got at least one audience. That's me. I've already submitted my proposal, I think in December. More or less, it kind of, has an overlap. So my title was Elastic Stack, a perspective for business intelligence folks. I am a hardcore like business intelligence guy, at least till last year.
I remember your talk, and it's very interesting, but go ahead.
Oh, nice. I'm glad you saw that already. Okay. So I've been working on Elastic Stack, or at least I started working on Kubernetes primarily, and we already have this EFK, like Elastic Stack, Fluentd, and then Kibana setup already. I was supposed to create those monitoring reports in Kibana.
Mhm.
So this is what has happened for me. I worked on Tableau, I worked on Power BI, primarily all the business intelligence reporting tools. And when I shifted to Elastic Stack, at least for the initial couple of months, I was scratching my head all through. I was like, I was expecting certain features or certain ways to work with Kibana based on my baggage from BI tools, right? That was not happening in Kibana, and I was frustrated. Then I realized my approach is completely not correct. So I thought, okay, let's just kind of restart everything. I started reading what is an inverted index all through. I didn't assume like, okay, it just works the way any reporting tool should work. There are certain, uh, differences in which a business intelligence developer should think while if he has to work on Elastic Stack. So primarily, I know how to work with SQL, how the mental model of how the data is stored in a relational database. But when it comes to a document database like Elasticstack, you have to change your mental mapping, and how do you work with Kibana, right? So I didn't want anyone else to, kind of go through the same pain, especially considering a lot of folks um, um, who are switching their, cross-field expertise has become very common, at least in my company and within the environment that I work on, right? So I thought this will be a helpful talk, like drawing comparisons between a data workflow in a business intelligence domain, and then the same kind of workflow in typical Elastic Stack. So it's not completely an introduction. I mean, not solely an introduction to Elastic Stack, but it's drawing parallels between a typical BI flow and Elastic Stack flow.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a great talk to be there, but then yeah, that's my submission. I just fill that Airtable form as well.
I think that is a very interesting talk, because you've applied like instinctively some of the guidelines that we've discussed. For example, right, connect with your audience. So your audience is, okay, I'm a BI developer and I have the desire of move to the Elk Stack to do BI stuff, but without using like Power BI or tools like that, right? So that's how you intelligently connected with your audience. So you did a great job there, right? And I think if you, I don't know how you plan to do this, but if you discuss the type of problems that you found when you were moving to the Elk Stack because of the like mannerisms that you've had like and BI, for example, just to illustrate one, right? BI developers usually have this concept, which is the star schema, right? When you were building, like you were modeling your data from the BI, you're going to deconstruct your relational model to come up with a star schema, right? And this has to do about entities and their relations, right? As you probably have known this and perceived this on the Elk Stack, Elasticsearch specifically, modeling relationships in Elasticsearch is not that it's impossible, right? But it is definitely possible, but it's way different from the relational world, right? Sometimes you have to deconstruct and denormalize your entities. Sometimes you have to use features like parent-child relationships or how they call it, child nodes relationships. So all of this is way interesting if you explain in the perspective of who is coming from the BI world, right? Because it's a whole new word, right? Elasticsearch is more towards like modeling data as if you are dealing with a NoSQL database, which is a total different way to model data in the relational database, right? So bottom line, I think your talk is amazing. Just make sure like you focus on this transitioning and the problems that may rise during this transitioning. I think it's very interesting.
I'm
Akshay,
glad.
this is Sachin. Um, I had same problem that you had it. So I think your talk will be very good for the beginners who trying to do this Elasticsearch, because I came from a Unix Linux administration, then Oracle DBA, and then doing this from last year, this Elasticsearch, and I had exact same problem that you had, changing the mantle. And every time I try to explain this to the manager or his manager or the team, it's like confusing for them,
Yeah.
because we all does
Agree.
the relational thing from many years.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah,
We
it's a
are
wonderful
kind of
topic.
brainwashed to think in terms of entities and then relations. So that's great to hear, Sachin. Now that gives me more excitement to polish my talk further.
Yep.
One thing with that is make sure that the your proposal emphasizes that BI perspective and explains some of those frustrations. You don't have to go into detail, like, hey, for some reason, I did this in Power BI, but I couldn't do this in Elasticsearch. So this is what I chose to do instead. But you can say, I examined some of my existing reporting workflows and had to come up with some alternatives that might have included, a couple of techniques. And then you might define what the techniques are, or just name the techniques. You don't have to define them. I think the more you can say, this is a talk for the BI analyst, the BI manager that's thinking about making this transition, and here's how we cleared some of those hurdles that most people are going to be having. The more that, as the reviewers are looking at this, they're going to say, oh, okay, this serves a need that, folks that are not, we talk about Elastic all day. We don't necessarily think about, how does someone transitioning from this position or from this tech stack into this tech stack overcome the obstacles that they're going to overcome. So for us, that helps us do our job better. So we're more likely to want to go down and select someone that's going to help us in that way.
Yeah. I tried to emphasize that right in the title itself, a perspective for business intelligence folks. Yeah, but yeah, in terms of delivering my content, that is definitely helpful. I thought I'll just give some SQL and DSL statements, but rather if I share my pain points and summarize what I've realized, what is possible and what is not possible, and definitely, like, Elastic as a company is moving towards making it even easier. I see that, like, especially with tools like Kibana Lens, where you don't really have to think all the way through in order to create one report. Like, you have to just like the BI tools, like just drag and drop, right? That's really helpful, and I loved Kibana Lens when I initially realized, hey, they're improving this. So yeah, that's a good feedback, folks. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome, actually. Let me share just one tip for you and for everybody that's here with us as well. For those of you just like Akshay that already submitted their talks, you might still be able to edit your abstract. If you go to Sessionize and go to the entry of you might see that it's all right in evaluation. But if the edit button is still there or is available, you can click there and change your abstract if you need it or if you want it, right? So try to do this. I do this a lot, by the way. Every time, like, for example, in a Friday night, I submit a conference for a talk, and then like Monday morning, I go there and back. Oh, no, I didn't like what I wrote. So, or maybe the English was not very perfect. So I kind of correct there and resubmit. This is possible.
Yeah, I just saw that. I can actually edit it. Thank you. One last question. I've requested a live session because I just wanted to interact with the participants. How do you take care of the time zone differences?
Yeah, that's a problem, right? There's no kind of a magic here. You have to make sure to comply with the time zone that the comfort for the language that you've applied for, which is, I think in your case is going to be English, right? I'm assuming, right? So if they say that Easter time or Pacific time, you have to make sure that you be there on time, preferably like 10 minutes before the schedule of your talk, right? Once your talk is approved and we come up with the schedule, we're going to announce this for all these approved speakers. So you're going to have this information in place, right? And also, I think we're going to make sure that we're going to send invites to your email. So not every conference does this, but we're going to be doing this. So with the invite, you have the reminder about when your session is going to be in place.
Great, thank you.
Hey, this is Vinod. I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, one of my submissions is Eat, Move, Sleep, Unraveling Insights from Everyday Data Set using the Elastic Stack. Just wanted a quick check on, would that be like an interesting talk for the community? This is based on like my personal projects for something called Quantified Self, data about my life and analysis using the Elastic Stack.
Yeah, I think it would be. It is interesting, though, if you could explore this talk from the perspective of what problems you were trying to solve to yourself or in your work, right? Talks becomes more interesting if they're being discussed from the perspective of a given problem. For example, maybe you were trying to solve a problem of better organize a document or better improve the storage to reduce the costs with storage. So what is specific problem you were dealing with in your work with Elasticsearch?
Yeah, so this is more of a personal data set analysis. So in the abstract, I have mentioned like 3 use cases. One is, okay, how does one go about choosing a meal based on available public data sets on meals?
Oh, okay.
And yeah, second is like, how do I analyze my workout data from my Apple Watch for longer terms? Because
Cool.
Apple Analytics is good for a single day, but not for a year or something. And third is like, I have an app to analyze my sleep cycles from Apple Watch. So how can I analyze that data set using the Elasticsearch?
Got it. I think it is interesting. And for me specifically, what I got interested in your talk is, okay, first of all, the use case about the Apple Watch, like how to kind of you analyze that data using Elasticsearch is already interesting by nature. But secondly, I would say that your talk is all about the process of analyzing data, which includes mapping the data sets, right? Design an index and making sure how the structure of the index, the schema that you're going to use, all of this comprises the analyze part, right? So all of this are the problems that you were trying to solve. So yeah, try to emphasize this in your journey of the analysis, right? From the moment that you start, from the moment you deliver. So all this meat over here is what makes your talk really interesting.
Got it. Thank you.
One thing and Vinod, not to jump into your talk too deeply, but looking at your description, the only thing that I would worry about is for a 25-minute talk, it seems like you're covering a few different topics. If you can find a way to find like the thread in between all of them, that to me is a better way to present it. Because one of the things that I noticed, and I'm someone that loves to do like all of like the personal hacking in the Elastic Stack as well. Like that is my bread and butter for like any type of presentations that I give. But when you're wanting to show many different use cases, it gives people the feeling that each use case is going to be presented in like a shallow manner. So like, I'm only going to talk about this for like 2 minutes. So yeah, here's how I did my movement data. People are going to want more than that. But if you one of the things that you put in 2 of those is like you utilize the Apple Watch. So positioning it from the angle of like, here's how I get data from my Apple Watch. Let me show you. And then here are a couple of examples of the data that's available. I think if you angle it from that position instead of here are 3 different use cases of how I use Kibana in my personal life, I think that it makes the talk stronger. And I will say that, all of the people that are helping in these talks right now, Ricardo, myself, Emmanuel, who I think is kind of working in the backgrounds there, we will be able to see the talks, we'll be able to see it, but we're not the ones voting. Like, we're not the ones making the final decision. We can't say like, yes, I spoke with them and this is the talk that we should give. We have to look at it from the perspective of like, how much time do we have? Is this talk going to be able to fill that time slot? Because that is a thing that people don't expect in virtual conferences now. You sign up for a 25-minute talk and then you give a 10-minute talk, and then that creates a bunch of logistics problems. So we have to make sure that every talk can stay on topic, but can also fill the timeline and feel like the listeners of the talk are getting enough information. So there's a lot that you're presenting. I think that you can do it. I think that it's perfectly fine. But I think if you want to improve your chances, you need to find the common thread in between all of those things and make your talk about that and use those examples to emphasize that common thread.
Got it. So find a common storyline and then pivot on that instead of 3 broad use cases, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. And again, that's just my opinion. That's as someone who likes to give talks on like analyzing Twitter data and stuff. So feel free. I mean, Ricardo, feel free to give your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, no, I would say that you're right, Jay. And the worry about the time management is a thing, especially in this conference. And if I were you, I would like focus on data acquisition and data modeling. Right? I think those are the like Jay's using the term, like the key thread that people would be interesting to see, right? Because everything else, if you think about it, if you already have data already on Elasticsearch correctly modeled and stored, plotting this on Kibana is the easy part, right? I'm using this because sometimes it's not that easy, right? But it's halfway there, right? So you don't necessarily have to tell the whole story, but those are, at least I think, that are the key parts. Like, how do I gather data from the Apple Watch, and how do I actually insert the data into Elasticsearch? That's the aha,
Got it. Thank you very much.
Hey, this is Sachin. I have not submitted anything or didn't even write up anything because I didn't know how to write it anyway. So now I got the idea, and I was going to do like how to replace the data warehouse, Oracle data warehouse, because that's what we did at my work. And so basically how I'm going to write or present it, something like this, that what problem we had with the Oracle database and why cannot we have an Oracle warehouse because it's too costly, and how we found Elasticsearch, how we pull the data from Oracle database, what kind of Java did we use, or what kind of method did we use to pull the data from Oracle, and how did we store it in Elasticsearch, and how did we present it back to the community, I mean, our users. That's pretty simple, basically.
No, yeah, it is simple, but I think it is interesting. And your proposal has all the characteristics of being a journey, right? A journey. So maybe you could, I would avoid like getting into too much specifics of the implementation details, because again, you have only 25 minutes, right? Or 5 minutes if you choose. But I would like structure your talk and, okay, first of all, you would start, what motivated you to do this migration? And you just explained it, which is a very common reason, which is Oracle was too costly, right? So that was the trigger. So start by this, and then start about the pain points that you've discovered. No, actually, first of all, before I move into this, why you choose Elasticsearch? Probably there was a reason for this. And then what were the pain points that you've discovered during this journey, right? Again, not necessarily in too much details, in a minor details, but in a high level, right? Because remember the guideline of, okay, you have to connect with your audience, right? So the approach is, if I am interested on doing the same, I would be interested to see and learn from you what are the gotchas and the pain points that if I know from your talk, I could avoid. That's your actionable, that's your, like, what you are delivering with your talk. I think that's what you should concentrate more your talk.
Okay, so should I mention, because before selecting Elasticsearch, we tested Grafana, we tested microservices. What is it called? Forgot the name of the technology. And then a couple others. Mm-hmm. We tested all of the different dashboards. But then we selected Elasticsearch just because its storage capacity and pulling out the data was really fast than any other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So should I mention that or just ignore that?
For time management constraints, I would leave this aside, but this is just me, okay? Because otherwise your journey story would be like too bigger, right? But unless you are willing to actually transform this talk for another perspective, which is why you choose Elasticstack when you're evaluating others. So, but at least this is me talking, right? But I would see this as a total whole new talk that focus on the criteria to select Elasticstack more than in the journey of usage of it. You see the difference?
Yes.
Those are different talks, right? Yeah, definitely. If you have like 1 hour, you could like kind of merge them in one single talk and treat this selection process as only a part of your journey, right? But the problem is time. That's the main challenge here.
Okay. And so can we just submit this PowerPoint whenever we have it upload it into the site?
For your talk?
Yes.
No, actually,
for the approval.
Oh yeah, no. The PowerPoints or the slides are you don't necessarily have to send us, right? You're only required, if your talk got approved, to actually present it, either for recording or present it live. If you want to share the slides, you're welcome to, but it's not necessarily.
So currently we just have to send out some Word document stating all the things that you already mentioned before.
Let me add the link to the CfP. Basically, it'll ask for a couple of things, some information on the format, what knowledge level is required for it, what language, some tags. And then ultimately it'll ask for, hey, give a description of the talk and then add some notes and comments that could help, the people that are reviewing the talk come to a decision on whether or not it should, we should approve or maybe hold off on a talk.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, the only thing necessarily is your submission of the abstract. It's not even a document. It's just fill the form.
That is the form that you send earlier. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, this is the link for the actual CfP. The form that I was requesting for is if you're asking for help setting up your proposal, or if you needed help maybe outlining it and we weren't able to get to you on this. One of the things that I think is important is, and Ricardo hit on this, because of how the conference is set up, we're going to have 25-minute talks and we're going to have lightning talks. What I would do is I would prepare 2 versions, submit one, and have the main bits of your talk, make sure that can fit in a lightning talk format as well. Because if you only submit a 25-minute talk and we're not able to, select it for whatever reasons, it may be a good lightning talk. It may be a good, like, hey, if you chop off the beginning and chop off the end and get to the main bits inside, you have a really great lightning talk. We'd love for you to present that. But we can't approve something that hasn't been submitted. So I would say, like, everyone that's listening, if you have a talk that has like a really key part, submit that key part for a lightning talk as well. We see both, so we'll know like, oh, okay, hey, like we can't, don't approve the lightning talk and the main talk, approve one or the other. But that's going to be something that's going to help you. And it's also a good way to get, can you submit 2 lightning talks and a main talk? Yes, 100%. You can submit as many talks as you want. I think 3, is the maximum. So just make sure they're not all the same talk. That's something that reviewers often get, and they will reject all of the talks at that point. It's like, because it feels like you're trying to trick them into selecting your talk. So make sure there are 3 unique, distinct talks, but you can submit multiple talks if you want.
Yep. So I think we've reached the time. Actually, we passed a little bit beyond what we arranged for this meetup, and we're going to have to end it here. But first of all, I would like to thank everybody that joined. I hope that was useful for your submissions and your abstracts. And again, Jay, if you could share just one more time for everybody the link of the Airtable. So if you haven't had the chance to actually discuss your ideas or your abstract in this meetup, right? Jay is going to put here on the chat the link of the Airtable. Just fill the form. Remember to put your email and the link of your abstract or idea, or even if you haven't submitted yet, you can share a link of a Google Doc form document that has your abstract and idea, and we can help you with this, right? And then we can send you the feedback of your submission or your talk or idea to your email, right? We are looking forward to hear all the awesome ideas that you have to share in this first edition of the Elastic Community Conference. And again, thanks for everybody that joined.